In the middle of the South Pacific Ocean, more than 3,500 kilometers from the nearest coastline of South America and over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited island, sits one of the most isolated pieces of land on the surface of the Earth. It is a small volcanic island, roughly 163 square kilometers in area, with no natural harbor, no navigable rivers, and no obvious reason why any human civilization would choose to settle there. And yet, scattered across its windswept hills and along its dramatic coastline, stand nearly 900 massive stone statues, some of them reaching heights of over 10 meters and weighing as much as 80 tons, carved with a precision and artistry that staggers the imagination. Nobody knows exactly how they were made. Nobody knows exactly how they were moved. And nobody knows exactly what happened to the civilization that created them. This is Easter Island, and it is one of the most profound and enduring mysteries in the entire history of human civilization. The island was first encountered by European explorers on Easter Sunday, April 5, 1722, when a Dutch navigator named Jacob Roggeveen landed there during a Pacific voyage. What Roggeveen found astonished him. The island was inhabited by a small population of Polynesian people living in relatively primitive conditions, with no large boats capable of ocean travel and limited resources. But surrounding them, standing silent on stone platforms along the coastline and scattered across the interior, were hundreds of enormous stone statues unlike anything Roggeveen had ever seen. The statues depicted stylized human figures with elongated heads, heavy brows, long ears, and strong chins. Many of them wore large cylindrical hats carved from red volcanic stone. And almost all of them were facing inland, away from the ocean, as if watching over the island and its people rather than looking out to sea. The statues are called moai, and they represent one of the most extraordinary engineering achievements of any pre-industrial civilization anywhere on Earth. The vast majority of them were carved from a single volcanic quarry on the island called Rano Raraku, where the soft compressed volcanic ash called tuff allowed skilled carvers to work with stone tools made from harder basalt. The carving process began with the statue lying on its back in the quarry, and the figures were carved directly from the living rock of the hillside before being detached and moved to their final positions. At the quarry today, nearly 400 unfinished statues remain in various stages of completion, frozen in the process of being made as if the carvers simply stopped work one day and never returned. Some are barely roughed out. Others are nearly complete, lying in their cradles of rock waiting for a journey that never came. The question of how the moai were moved from the quarry to their platforms, some of which are located over 20 kilometers away across rough volcanic terrain, has fascinated and divided researchers for decades. The largest moai ever erected stands nearly 10 meters tall and weighs approximately 75 tons. Moving an object of that size across difficult terrain without wheels, without draft animals, and without any of the mechanical advantages that modern engineering takes for granted would represent an extraordinary feat even today. How a relatively small island population accomplished it using only the technology available to them in the medieval period is a question that has generated more theories than answers. The most widely accepted theory today holds that the moai were walked to their destinations using a combination of ropes and coordinated rocking motions that would have allowed the statues to be moved upright in a swaying, shuffling manner somewhat like a person walking. Experimental archaeology conducted in 2012 demonstrated that a team of 18 people using ropes attached to the statue's head could successfully walk a replica moai across flat ground using this technique. Supporters of this theory point to an oral tradition among the island's indigenous Rapa Nui people that says the statues walk to their positions under their own power, guided by a spiritual force called mana. This oral tradition, passed down through generations, may preserve a memory of exactly this rope walking technique, describing the swaying motion of the statues as a form of walking. Other researchers have proposed that the moai were moved using wooden sledges and rollers, with large numbers of workers hauling the statues across a network of prepared roads. Evidence of ancient roads has been found on the island, and some of these roads lead directly from the quarry to the coastal platforms. The problem with the sledge and roller theory is that it would have required an enormous quantity of timber, and Easter Island today has almost no trees. Whether the island was once heavily forested and was deforested in the process of statue construction and transportation is itself one of the central questions in the Easter Island debate. The ecological collapse theory, which gained significant popularity in the late 20th century, proposed that the Rapa Nui civilization destroyed itself through environmental overexploitation. According to this theory, the original settlers of Easter Island arrived to find a lush subtropical forest and proceeded to cut down trees at an unsustainable rate to use as rollers and sledges for moving the moai, as fuel, and as timber for building boats and houses. As the forest disappeared, the soil eroded, crops failed, the population crashed, social order collapsed into warfare and cannibalism, and the civilization that had built the moai destroyed itself from within. This narrative was widely accepted for decades and became a popular metaphor for environmental destruction and civilizational collapse. More recent research has significantly complicated this story. Archaeological evidence suggests that the decline of the Rapa Nui population was primarily caused not by internal collapse but by the catastrophic effects of European contact, particularly the introduction of diseases to which the islanders had no immunity, followed by slave raids in the 19th century that devastated the population. Some researchers now argue that the Rapa Nui people were actually skilled environmental managers who coexisted with a changing landscape for centuries before European contact ended their civilization in a matter of decades. The mystery of why the statue construction stopped so suddenly is equally unresolved. At the quarry at Rano Raraku, the abrupt abandonment of hundreds of partially completed statues suggests that something happened that brought the entire enterprise to a halt without warning. Whether that something was environmental collapse, social revolution, warfare between competing clans, or some other cause is not known. What is known is that at some point the Rapa Nui people stopped building new moai and began toppling the existing ones, pushing the great statues off their platforms face down onto the ground. Almost every moai that had been erected on a coastal platform was eventually toppled, and the meaning of this systematic destruction of their own cultural monuments is one of the deepest mysteries of Easter Island. The island also contains an undeciphered writing system called Rongorongo, a series of glyphs carved onto wooden tablets that has never been translated despite decades of effort by linguists worldwide. If the Rongorongo script could be decoded, it might answer many of the questions that surround Easter Island's history. But the population collapse that followed European contact was so catastrophic that knowledge of how to read Rongorongo was lost, and the tablets that survive offer their secrets to no one. Easter Island sits alone in its ocean, 3,500 kilometers from anywhere, surrounded by water in every direction, covered in the silent stone faces of a civilization that built something extraordinary and then vanished. The moai watch over an island that no longer remembers why they were built, moved by hands whose techniques died with their owners, carved in honor of ancestors whose names are forgotten. Nearly 900 stone giants standing in the wind, keeping a secret that the ocean has swallowed completely. Subscribe to Lost Chronicle, and every week we will take you deeper into the cases that history could not explain.